This is CD number 2, Learning How to Manage Anger in Myself and Others. Here's Dr. Wise.
You're not imposing a solution. You're encouraging them in their mind to move to solution orientation. Why? What part of the brain is used when people are trying to solve problems? The logical and rational side. So, oh, sure. And that's a great way to escalate somebody up again. See, I don't want your solution. You're disrespecting me by telling me what to do. I'm not a child. Now, if...
Part of the child, though.
Oh, yeah.
She can suggest something, but if the kid doesn't want to go to Sunday school, period,
Right.
then she's in a confrontation.
Well, no, you say, well, what other things? You see, you start teaching them to analyze and decide there's not only one answer. You say, oh, well, that is one thing we could do. We could not go to Sunday school. That's one answer. But there's some downsides. Do you have any friends in Sunday school? By the way, questions are better than statements. Why? Because they have to use the cognitive side of their brain to answer the question. And what you're encouraging is pushing electricity to the cognitive side of the brain, and by doing that, they begin to gain self-control. Also, do you know the answers you really believe in? The answers you came up with. What you really believe in are conclusions that you concluded, not somebody told you. And if someone first told you that conclusion, the only reason you're committed to it is because you have concluded the same thing inside your own head. That's just the way human beings are. Now, it's true of children, too. Now, of course, it's got to be age appropriate, because this is not true of very young children, so you have to use age appropriate awareness here. But the more you can begin to encourage that cognitive process, the better, and it does calm them down. But that's just it. Okay, that's one thing we can do. See, basically they're surprised. Oh, you're not going to shoot my idea down right away? No. Oh, okay, well, what's another thing we can do? Well, I guess we could go and talk to the teacher. Or, in other words, you start, so this point is well taken. Usually if you try to tell somebody the solution, that will just re-trigger them. Most people are not looking for you to solve it. You're going to encourage them to solve it, see, and go from there. Yes?
Sometimes people talk about the past and bring up the past and they get angry.
Right.
What do you should do about that?
Well, you have to understand the past is not past until it no longer influences the present. So if someone's bringing up the past, it means that we haven't processed that enough to where the person has been able to say it's done. Or they believe the past is being repeated. And so they're seeing patterns. So, yeah, we have to go ahead and say, well, we don't want to repeat the past. What could we do to keep the past from being repeated? And so that's part of it. In other words, anytime someone brings up the past, it's because the past hasn't been resolved. Now, the other thing in here is if what has happened here is that they felt hurt by you, you have to decide, do I owe this person an apology? And so we're going to talk later, but yes, there is an appropriate time to say, I'm sorry. And sometimes that sorry is, I didn't know this would hurt you because I really didn't know it would hurt you. And sometimes it's I was having a bad moment and I said something I shouldn't have said, did something I shouldn't have done, I'm sorry. Because ultimately, you see, this is what I'll tell you. Every human being that you relate to in every sphere of your life is a sinner, which means they don't love the way they should love. They are not perfect in loving. That's a hard truth to understand. But there's another truth, even harder to understand. You're not perfect in loving. So the only thing that can keep relationships alive between two people that are imperfect and loving is humility to confess it, and then the grace to forgive it. But of course, with some plan to not have it keep happening. Yeah.
If you've apologized for something that's been in the past 6 or 7 times in a couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and you write an apology, you read the apology, and you just keep apologizing over and over again, and it keeps being brought up, then what do you do?
Well, the key is say, it is clear that you're struggling with forgiving me. Because you see, there's two parts of that exchange. I had somebody apologize to me this week, and they said, I'm sorry I did that. I could, because of the circumstances, very sincerely and really say, I forgive you. You see, the closure on that exchange is only over when the other person has been able to find the grace of her gift, which we're going to talk about a bit later. There's also, we do a whole seminar just on forgiveness, because the process of forgiveness can be very difficult depending on the depth of the wound. And the thing is, we have to understand, if someone keeps repeating, say, listen, okay, let's sit down. What is there about this that's not resolved? And usually what it's not resolved is there's some emotional element in it where the person, we have to understand it's the person who was hurt that has to process the pain. They haven't processed the pain. Or there's a fear that whatever happened in the past is going to be repeated, so you have to address the fear. Or, unfortunately, since you made a mistake, I'm going to use this to beat you over the head so I can control you for the rest of your life. Because we love to have power and control over other people, don't we? You want to control the other 8 billion people on this planet right now, confess it, right? And the world would be a better place if only they would submit to you. And they feel the same way. Isn't that great? 8 billion people, all who want to be absolute ruler of the universe. So, but of course we have a few wars because of that. So you see, but there is a process. But you do have to address that. Say, we're having a problem. We need to go deeper into something. Either you have not been able to forgive me, there's some element here. So you can't, if you bury the past, it'll keep resurrecting. I mean, it just keeps coming back. But get the forgiveness CDs. Unfortunately, I don't have that there. Call Janet, and you can get CDs on forgiveness. Or we'll do forgiveness again sometime this year, I'm sure. But there's an element of that in here. Okay, the anger process. First of all, anger starts with our state of being. If you're tired, is it more likely you'll lose your temper? If you've had a sleepless night and been tossing and turning and have an upset stomach, are you going to be more likely to lose your temper? So we have to be conscious of what physical state am I in. There are some days that, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to emotionally vomit on somebody today because I feel like I want to hit somebody, and I might as well hit you. And it has nothing to do yet with what anybody's done. I got off on the wrong side of the bed in the morning, and I'm just ornery today. So you have to know that. Then there's a lot of ideas in our head, what we call here life commandments. Before the age of 10, you produced basically the operating system of your computer, okay? And so what it is that operating system is the grid through which you interpret all of life. You're writing a story. What happens today? You will go to bed tonight, and you will put today into a narrative story that you've been writing since you were a little child. And you're going to feel about today within the framework of that narrative story. And that's the way we all are. And we've all got different stories. Someday I just sit in the mall and watch people go by, and I just imagine all the complexity of all the different stories that are going on. And even, by the way, when they walk through the mall, they don't even interpret the mall the same way, because everything in the mall is being interpreted. Everything is being interpreted. One person goes by someplace, they see some food, they go, boy, yum, yum. And the other person goes by there and goes, yuck, yuck. It's the same hamburger, okay? But it gets totally different emotional reactions because of the stories that we have going on in our head. So you do have ideas in your head. And by the way, most people don't know their story. Most people don't know the ideas in their head. And they also assume, and this is where your assumption is bad, that everyone else on the planet has the same ideas in their head. They don't. Yes?
What would you say to a person that says, I'm not a morning person,
You have to say it a little louder.
A lot of people would say, I'm not a morning person.
Right.
Does that apply to the state of being that you
Yeah. They're giving you some important information, okay? They're saying, and there is in fact this whole thing on biorhythms, they're basically saying, I'm not very good early in the morning. So if we're going to talk about something important, you better bring in a Red Bull. Because the odds that any rational part of my brain is going to be working is not high. Now, my wife and I are, the two extremes of this. I get up at 5 in the morning, okay? I am a morning person. And so I would love, hey, let's, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, let's talk about the most serious thing in the world. Let's fix the nation. I could talk to President Obama and say, listen, this is the way we're supposed to do it. I mean, I'm up, I'm ready to go. My wife is not a morning person. Anything before 10 should not be too deep, okay? We're just working on getting the eyelids open and facing life and, And now, at 10 p.m., because I've been up since 5, if my wife says at midnight, honey, I'd really like to share this for you, because she kicks in about 10, and we're in trouble, because I said, I get my Red Bull out of the refrigerator, and then we can continue, because we're just not on the same rhythm. So our best time is any place in the middle, okay, between 10 and 10. Anything between 10 and 10, but you see, that's admitting that. People, this is again the story. If the story in my head is people are going to lie to try to avoid deep conversations with me, okay, then I interpret what is said not through the grid of this person is telling me about true. I interpret it through that other life commandment. See, that other grid, that other proverb. Now, by the way, they might be doing that. But I'm not God. I don't read minds well. You have that problem too? And I don't really know. Only God really knows. So be careful and try to find reasonable accommodations. But it can't be, I'm bad in the morning, I'm bad in midday, I'm bad at noon, I'm bad at night, I'm just kind of never really conscious. No, that's not true. So, what you try to do is again, treat the other as you would want to be treated. Somebody said that once. It was like, love your neighbor as yourself. Anything. That's basically one of the keys. Yes?
A few years ago, I was volunteering at another church.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple people, primary players, that as soon as I got to the property, we need this, what's going on, whatever, and it didn't matter how loving they were, I immediately felt attacked. So I would say, give me like 5 minutes or 10 minutes to settle in, and I'll be happy to deal with whatever it is. And that buffer removed, amazing how much more perceptive I was. But they're like,
Right.
I'm task for you, yes, I understand, but until I settle in, I can't hear what you're saying, and in fact, I'm really mad at you.
Right. This is really just setting a boundary. If you're relating to people, say, listen, this will work much better after I have my coffee. So I'm going to the kitchen, I'm drinking my coffee, and I will return. And once, if people respect the boundary, you might find what she found. It works. See? Experimentation in human relationships is okay, and remember, you don't control anybody but yourself. And every effort you make to control another person, they will resist. That's where abuse comes in. Because people resist us controlling them, we have to try harder to control them, and then we become abusive with them. Because eventually, we try to control them to the point that police come and take us away. You see? And so there's sociological limits to what you can do to try to control people. And so the bottom line is we just have to move away from power and control and start looking to how do we solve the problems and how do we show compassion towards each other. One of the way, by the way, is understanding, the ideas in my head are not the same ideas as in the other person's head. The other person is saying, we need to be efficient, and the moment people get here, here's the list of things to do. And another person could be saying, when we get here, we should have some time to fellowship and some time to just figure out where we are. Just different ideas in different people's head. No bad idea, it's just different ideas. Then what happens is we have these primary emotions. An event takes place in the primary emotions, and there's all kinds of literature on what are the primary emotions. I've made it very simple. Pain and pleasure. These are the primary emotions. And the thing is we feel either pain or pleasure coming out of a situation. Anger comes out of the pain side. And so we feel pain, we feel discomfort, we feel something not good. And that can make us feel vulnerable. And so the emotion that can feel that we're the strongest and we're the safest and we have the most control is anger. Because anger feels inside like we have tremendous power. Now, there's another reality you need to face, and I need to face. No one has ever felt your anger but you. You can't get it out of you. Now, they can hear words in which they think you're angry, and when they think you're angry, do you know what they actually are getting in touch with? They know what it feels like when they're angry. And they're imagining that what you're experiencing inside is similar to the anger that you feel inside, and we then imagine that their inside is like our inside when we're angry, which may not be true. Ours may be more intense or less intense or anything else. It could be any number of different differences. And the other thing is, all that power you're feeling, it's stuck inside of you, both physically and every other way. There's nothing magical about anger. Anger, according to that wisdom we saw, cannot make things right. It doesn't have the power. We think it has all this power. No, it has the power to give you an ulcer. Okay, it does have that power. Okay, it has a power to give you a headache. It has that power. It has the power to give you a heart attack. It has that power. It has the power to raise your blood pressure. It has that power. But guess what? That's all stuff inside you, right? It has no power. No one has ever felt your anger. So it's nowhere near as powerful. It's an illusion. It's like our worry. We think by worrying about something, it'll get better. I stayed up all night worrying about it. Boy, that helped. All that energy. The worry never gets out of you. The anger never gets out of you. It's really a waste of energy. Yeah.
What if people learn how to deal with it by getting it out on the field in sports, and they 8-10 years did that, and now later in life there's no release, so.
They need a video game. No. Now, the thing is, sometimes people have to make transfers, and we go through life changes. And so we might have been doing something. Somebody might have gone down to the gym. And there is a relationship that sometimes physical exercise can help us to cope with some of the physical things. But also, they most likely didn't develop what we call internal coping mechanisms, and they're going to have to grow in that. Or they're going to have to transfer this in some way to find a substitute. But this is a legitimate it's a legitimate issue. Sometimes we're using coping mechanisms and then we can't use those coping mechanisms because of some change of life. We have to do it. But also, sometimes we've been overly dependent on an external coping mechanism, and we need to build more internal coping mechanism.
Somebody process that you suggested, how long would it take if it's a lifetime somebody else has done that?
Oh, no, if someone diligently begins working on this, they can have a substantial change in about 90 days. And if they continue, if we want to see complete, total, change, it takes 3 years. Okay, so people can go through radical transformation to where they're totally, handling things different in about a 3-year period. It takes work. In other words, I'll tell you this, if you keep thinking the way you've always been thinking, you're going to continue to be stinking. Okay? It's that bad. Okay? It's not going to get, if you say, I'm not going to change anything, the answer is the world is going to change and then I'll feel better. Really? You're really going to wait until all the people in your life get their act together and then you can be happy? That's not a good plan. Once all the nations of the world stop having wars, I will be at peace. Good luck. I think we've had about 200 years of world history like that, right? So we have to stop looking for the answers to come from outside to us, and we have to start saying, see, there's only one thing you do have control over, yourself. Self-control is the only real control. And this is basically a part of self-control, what we're seeing here this morning. But without that, you've got nothing. So if you keep waiting, I want this other person to get their act together and then I'll get my act together. Well, they're waiting for you. So if you would hurry up, then they could get their act together. No, it doesn't work that way. Notice that we then, when we feel anger, we can have a chosen method. How am I going to deal with the anger? There are healthy and unhealthy ways to deal with anger. And then this comes out in our words, our body language, and our actions. So in other words, there's several key. I can change my state of being. I can improve it. I can change the ideas in my head. I can change my story. I can change my chosen method of how I express my anger, because some are healthy and some are unhealthy, okay? You can't, by the way, simply by an act of the will, stop your anger. The willpower does not have that power. The willpower can change the ideas in your head. You can decide, I'm going to put some new ideas in my head. Your will can even change your state of being, because you're going to say, I need to get more sleep and get more rest because I'm a really grumpy bear. You can also go see a doctor to see if there's something wrong with you biologically, to see if there's something physically, making you feel elevated when you don't have a good reason. But you can also then choose, but you can't simply will your, see, most people know that we have the old snowball at the top of the mountain, and it's rolling down and becoming an avalanche. And most of us become aware saying, boy, look at all that. It's really going to be messy when it hits. And so we put willpower, faithful willpower, at the bottom of the mountain and say, willpower, stop the avalanche. Willpower is saying, here we go again. And willpower consistently usually gets plowed under. Now, every once in a while it doesn't, and that's because we don't know it. But in our desperation, we most likely also prayed, and God, the Holy Spirit, is actually there standing, and he's the one actually stopping, the avalanche, but willpower gets the wrong idea. Wow, that's a great avalanche I just stopped. Good job. And but actually it was, God. And so it kind of gives us a wrong impression. But the vast majority, and then, of course, what we do, the poor willpower comes out of the avalanche, and we yell at willpower. I can't believe how weak you are. 50 lashes. And we beat willpower up. Well, we're the one that put it at the bottom of the avalanche. We're the boss. No. Put willpower at the top of the hill, where you can change the story, where you can change the state of being, where you can keep the snowball from ever going down the hill. See? Now there, willpower can do a really great job. But most of us, we just keep using willpower and kamikaze suicide missions. Not good. You don't lack willpower. You're not using it right. Yeah.
Would you say that there's a correlation between anger and love because they're both strong emotions, and the opposite of love is not hate, the opposite of love is apathy? So would you say that there was a correlation between anger and love?
Well, is there a correlation between anger and love? Well, there is to a degree. Usually the people we will feel the greatest amount of anger towards are those we love the most. See, anger means that we care about the person. And so an awful lot of times we will, because we want to change the person, we want something to change. See, that's why it's easier. It was easier for me to remain calm with the 3,000 customers. I cared for them in the very general part of the human race type of way, but I didn't have a personal relationship with them. I could get done at 5, go home, and I could forget about them. Okay. Now, by the way, you have to do that if you're a manager, otherwise you're in trouble. Okay. Carrying the problems of 3,000 people could kill you. But those people close to us, we can feel like we need to either keep them from harming themselves or keep them from hurting us or whatever. So sometimes we find it most easy to express anger. And love, by the way, we did a seminar not too long ago, learning how to love. Love also is not something, there are things we can do to become more loving, and there are things we can do, and we don't teach that seminar. I don't have a seminar on how to become more angry. I don't think we need that. But there are things you can do in order to lessen anger, and there are things you can do to increase love. Because the bottom line is, there is a process to what goes on inside, and it's a spiritual process, it's a psychological process, it's a physical process, it's a whole person process. And we can do things that actually encourage the good emotions, the emotions that are profitable and healthy, and we can do things that would discourage the wrong use. Now again, there are appropriate times for anger. There's times when we should get angry. And so what we're talking about is trying to manage anger so that we don't misuse it. Yes?
Well, I have a little saying, it's anger in its time and place, may consume a kind of grace. If there is some reason in it, it doesn't last beyond a minute.
Okay, and yeah, so one of the concepts here is that good anger, the sun does not set. It's not long-lasting, and it doesn't become bitterness, which is when anger becomes the cancer of the soul when it becomes bitterness, when it gets, be long-lasting and stuff like that. So it's, there is godly anger, but there is no such thing as godly bitterness. So it's one of the things we're trying to do is prevent that. Now, basically, this kind of fits in. There's two ways we can express anger. One is the nuclear bomb approach. That's not healthy, in case anyone was wondering. It's just like atomic energy. If you release atomic energy in an uncontrolled manner, you get an atomic bomb and you get death and devastation and destruction. If you release the energy, same energy, through an atomic plant, you can send electricity to a whole city. Okay? And so there is, in fact, some of the greatest things have been done. Martin Luther King took anger at prejudice and hatred and transformed it into a movement to try to make things better. In fact, some of the greatest things in human history has been done. Somebody could hate ignorance and found a educational, foundation. Someone could hate poverty and, create. So sometimes the thing is our anger towards a situation becomes a motivation to make it better. And so properly channeled, that anger isn't against the person, the anger is against the problem. Okay? And again, we move into solution orientation. One of the things that makes anger properly used, it's just energy. It's literally just physical energy, emotional energy, even spiritual energy. It is energy, and the question is, am I going to release it like an atomic bomb, which isn't going to do anybody any good, it's going to bring devastation, or am I going to release this energy, this is methodology, am I going to release this energy in a way to make the world a better place? But the way to do that, your anger has to be governed by your reasonable, rational, and logical mind. Because if it isn't, you get the atomic bomb. So you can't afford to have anger simply released without a plan on how to use it for good. By the way, you're saying, I never understood life was so complicated. It is not complicated to live your life poorly. You don't need any training on that. We don't have to train people on how to live messy, dysfunctional, harmful lives. We have kind of just a natural ability to achieve that. But to live life well, and to live life productively, and to use that which is in us in a way that brings healing, that's not easy at all. And most people don't find their way. And spontaneity is way overrated. Okay? There are sometimes spontaneity is great, but many times spontaneity really is just that nuclear bomb going off. We have to plan to be spontaneous in appropriate settings. So we have to, but you see, a lot of us don't want to believe that. We don't want to believe that we're that bad. We don't want to believe other people are that bad. We don't want to believe that life is that complicated. And so we want it just to work out without us trying to think about it. I'm sorry, gravity works. There were a lot of sincere guys who wanted to make the first flying airplane. And I don't know if you've seen the films. They have like 7 wings and stuff like that. And they start pedaling on their bicycle towards the end of the cliff. And they're sincere. I mean, if they weren't sincere, you wouldn't be on this stupid thing about ready to jump it off a cliff, right? They're sincere. They believe in their ideas. But sincerity and belief doesn't keep it from crashing. You have to actually follow the laws of aerodynamics. I don't know if the right people were the right brothers were the most sincere. I don't know whether they were the ones that, had the most passion. They had the best idea about how to fly. So you see, what we have to do, I think sincerity is better than insincerity, and I believe commitment is better than non-commitment, but what you need is you also need methodologies that work. Or else you're just going to be sincerely messing up your life with great passion. Because gravity works. And it's totally indifferent over your sincerity or anything else. See? So that's one of the things. Most of us Americans like to believe if I'm sincere, it'll work out. No. Have you looked at some people sincerely investing in the stock market? Not so good. We have 7 tools of anger management. First is self-nurture. Second is the 100% rule. Third is response, not react. Fourth is develop empathy. And those are summarized on the last page. So if you're radically writing, saying, I'll never get them this quickly, you can cheat. Okay? But there they are. Self-nurture, 100% rule, response, not react, develop empathy. Now, you're saying that's only 4. You're correct, because I have another slide. So you're not failing in math, nor have I miscounted. So both of which could have happened. The second part is change our self-talk. You and I talk to ourselves all the time. The vast majority of what we tell ourselves, in fact, they say it is estimated that you speak to yourself somewhere between 15,000 and 35,000 words every day. You are just a chatterbox going on inside. You don't even pay any attention to it. It's just, it's going on. It's going on subconsciously. Your subconscious never stops talking to you. Have you noticed you dream? It just is always, some way or another, trying to communicate something to you. So you got a ton of inside information.
I wish it was a VCR thing I could rewind. What's the 100% rule? What's the 100%?
We're going to get there. We're going to cover each of these 7. Okay. You're good. This is just covering. We're going to cover each of these 7. Don't worry. This is just telling you where we're going. This is the map. This isn't the content. The assertive communication, one of the problems is we don't know how to communicate healthy, and basically, so we're communicating unhealthy. We don't know how to communicate except by using atomic bombs or by stuffing inside, which then leads to an atomic bomb. Because, by the way, there's 2 ways people communicate normally without training. One, they're skunks. The skunk gets, nervous or upset and sprays everybody in the room. And it's a defense mechanism, okay? 2, the turtle. The turtle sees danger coming and goes inside the shell. The only problem, turtles, by the way, we all like turtles better than skunks, right? I mean, most of us have had pet turtles. Only a few of us had pet skunks, right? I never assume anything. A few of you, I had a great skunk. Okay, so the thing is, understand this, turtles, because turtles have a tendency to think they're superior people. I mean, I am not a skunk. I am a turtle. They have turtle clubs. All turtles live in microwaves. All turtles live in microwaves. I know this is a gross thought, but imagine a turtle in a microwave. Any people know what would eventually happen if you put a turtle in a microwave? Ba-boom! So an exploding turtle is actually more dangerous than a skunk. They go to all these people who killed themselves, killed their family. They always ask the neighbors the same question. Well, did you know this person was such a violent? Oh no, they were the nicest person in the world. Never a bad word. They were a turtle in a microwave. Now, you see, a turtle is very consistent. You talk to a turtle after they blow up, and if they're not in jail. And so the thing is that, you talk to them afterwards, they said, what did you do wrong? I didn't have a strong enough shell. I am rebuilding the shell even now, so that next time around. Now, physics majors, if you get a harder shell, but the pressure keeps building inside, what's going to happen next time? The bigger explosion.
This concludes CD 2. Please change over to CD number 3.